Now we're going to think about what we can learn about ADHD from research into the brain. Children with ADHD are not lazy or naughty. Their brains are wired differently. The folds in the brain are unique to individuals, just like fingerprints, so we can learn a great deal by studying images of the brain in different people. So what parts of our brains help us get from A to B? What parts of our brains enable us to plan to do a task and then accomplish it? Well, S is for structures, how the brain is built. N is for networks, how the different structures are linked. And C is for chemicals, how the networks send messages to each other. These can all be different in individuals with ADHD, which is why they have challenges in how they interact with others, perform tasks, and cope with emotions. Okay, so brain structures take longer to develop in individuals with ADHD. This is because the genes relating to ADHD affect how the brain is structured, as well as how it controls and makes sense of messages to and from the body. So conditions such as ADHD are often referred to as neurodiversity because this highlights that it's a condition resulting from a difference in how the brain is structured. Children with ADHD often understand rules and social expectations, but their brains make it hard for them to pause and think about the rules and expectations in the moment. Just want to make a note here that if a child that you're teaching has ADHD as well as autism, ASD, then it's important to bear in mind that they may well struggle with understanding the social expectations as well, so we'll need some additional social skills interventions. The front part of the brain uses knowledge that has been learned to think things through and make decisions. It's where you use what you know. The prefrontal cortex is the red area in the image shown, and this is often slower to grow in size in children with ADHD. I like this quote by Dr. Russell Barkley. He says that ADHD is a performance disorder. You can't perform the things you know how to do. So brain networks also operate too quickly or slowly. As well as showing that parts of the brain differ in size in children with ADHD, brain imaging has shown us that the networks that connect the different parts of the brain tend to be more or less active than in neurotypical people. An ADHD brain not only looks different, it behaves differently when it comes to controlling actions, impulses, and emotions. Because different parts of the brain don't work together as effectively, it can be hard for a child with ADHD to switch between tasks, manage transition periods, and know what information to focus on. Children with ADHD often have difficulty settling to sleep. This is because the parts of the brain networks responsible for switching off are less responsive in those with ADHD, so it takes longer for them to return to resting mode. The structure and networks of the ADHD brain are powerful but very difficult to control. An ADHD brain is like having the powerful engine of a racing car, but the brakes of a bicycle. Another aspect of the brain that differs in individuals with ADHD is that brain chemicals struggle to get messages between the different networks. They have difficulty working efficiently together because the ADHD brain has lower levels of some really important chemicals, such as dopamine, which mean that messages just don't get sent properly between the brain, body, outside world, and back again. One example of the impact of low dopamine is that it makes it really hard for a child with ADHD to stay motivated. The child is then compelled to seek stimulation, which is why you'll often see lots of movement in children with ADHD. So if you have a child with ADHD in your class, it's likely their brain is smaller in size than their peers, and they're producing different amounts of chemicals. This means messages are not getting effectively communicated between the different brain structures and their body, and it's just not working together well as a network. So how is ADHD treated? Well, there's no one solution. What's most important is to understand that each child's individual profile means that their treatment will be different. Some children go down the medicinal route, and actually they find that it really helps their brain in terms of functioning, being able to be better able to control what they attend to, and also it can help in terms of their sleep as well if they have sleep medication. Some individuals also go down the therapeutic route, especially if they're struggling with their emotional needs. Many people with ADHD are at greater risk of developing anxiety and depression, so it's really important that the therapeutic route is considered alongside any medicinal approach. There's a bit of a myth that sugar makes ADHD worse and it can even cause ADHD. Well, to be honest, it's the same as for any child. The more sugar you give them, the more they're going to get a little bit bouncy. What really is important is that a child with ADHD, just like any other child, has a healthy, balanced diet. But what we do know is that sugar can actually play an important role in helping a child with ADHD. So, for example, individuals with ADHD benefit from a sugar boost in their blood to stimulate the front part of their brain before tasks that are demanding of their executive function skills. So, for example, where they're going to have to really think and plan, use their memory, maintain attention, thinking here particularly of exams. So a good tip here is if there's a child that has ADHD that you teach, encourage them to have a snack of dried fruit or banana, or even sip on some juice, because we know from recent research that fluid form of glucose that can get into the brain quickly can really help a child to maintain that level of focus needed during an exam. And protein-rich foods are used by the body to make neurotransmitters, the chemicals that are released by the brain cells to communicate with each other. So they help turn on the brain. So again, a protein-rich diet is really important for children with ADHD. Dr. Russell Barkley describes ADHD as a chronic disability, and he compares it to diabetes. There's no cure, but the symptoms can be managed with a combination of things we've already mentioned here, so medicine and therapeutic input and diet, but also, really crucially, adapting the environment and the tasks that a child may be having to deal with in school. Because they tend to be slower than many of their peers to develop those self-management skills, most children with ADHD tend to need more support and structure in their daily life than many of peers of their same age. So they usually benefit from consistent and clear expectations in terms of maybe their morning routine, how they're going to prepare for school, and actually once they're in school as well, lots of consistent reminders and clarity about that daily routine. And compared to children of a similar age, they're going to need more supervision for things like doing home learning, completing chores, and also limiting excessive screen time. It can be quite difficult for an individual with ADHD to know when to stop, mainly because they have that difficulty with sense of time and they lose themselves in the activity, so they don't notice time slipping away. It's also important they get support with maintaining a reasonable bedtime routine so they can get adequate sleep, because you know that when children have difficulty sleeping and they lack sleep, it impacts on their attention in school and their ability to access their memory, so it turns into a bit of a cyclical effect here. Finally, the crucial aspect to helping a child with ADHD is that the adults supporting them have an understanding of the impact when somebody finds it hard to use their executive function skills and they have sensory processing needs. It's really, really important that adults at school support children in terms of adapting the environment and providing support for their individual profile. So I've linked below a video that is a short summary explaining brain functioning in a person with ADHD. It's worth taking a look. I think it's really well put together. And then perhaps it's a good time to take a break. And in the next section, we're going to have a think about what it's actually like to have ADHD.